Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross, live ahead of the quarterfinals at the 2022 Australian Open, and I am here live on YouTube to go through every single match, probably provide a few comments on the fourth round matches that saw the 8 men still standing making the quarterfinals, and then previewing all 4 quarterfinal matches in a lineup of quarterfinalists that's one of the most intriguing ones that I can remember. I just realized that in the chat I put that I'm live at 5 p.m. now that I'm on Pacific time, where most people are on, and I didn't specify the time zone at all. And that is sleep deprivation right there. That is just failure to address the details. But anyway, I'm also going to answer some comments in this video that are have already been posted on the YouTube community tab. And I want to do that before I get into these quarterfinal matchups. And by the way, for those listening, especially on replay, I am going to go in reverse order. So the Nadal match, which is going to be first up, is going to be basically the next match that we see. I'm going to address that one last. That'll be at the end of the live stream. And then I will do tomorrow's matches. I'm going to do those ones first. But I want to start with this question that I did really like from Max, that said, how have your opinions of the remaining guys changed / not changed over the tournament? So at this point, let's take a look at the quarterfinalists, and I will go through them here. So Nadal, how has my opinion changed on Nadal? Not at all. I think that, I don't think, and I'll get to this a little bit more, but I don't really think that there's been much of an opportunity to have major takeaways with Nadal. Shapovalov, well, he faced 2 big servers and blocked the return and got a really high percentage of first serve returns in play, which is super big. And I think he's made that mental reset where he's kind of back to taking the court with the kind of focus, determination, and confidence that he needs to have. And it was just a real letdown emotionally and mentally at the end of 2021. And it's great to see he's turned the page on that. You have Gael Monfils. Well, his run in this tournament could have been predicted based on how he ended 2021. So in that respect, no surprise, no change of opinion. But I really like Monfils's aggression early in rallies behind his serve. I think that's been a positive development. And as a result, he has been able to navigate this draw playing players who he should beat, but not only has he beaten them, but he's beaten them quickly, and that has been something that he struggled to do throughout his career, and that is great to see. Matteo Berrettini, nothing has changed for me there. He's been clutch. He's doing what he does well. He is a player who, although I put him on upset alert due to his draw and because I didn't think that he would beat Carlos Alcaraz, Matteo Berrettini and then Nakashima I thought was a tough first round. Berrettini seems like one of the least upset-prone guys in the top 10. He feels so unbelievably reliable. And in that respect, again, nothing's really changed with him. How about Jannik Sinner? I don't know. The trajectory and the improvements that Sinner has had physically continue. I got to say, he's probably the player out of all the quarterfinalists. I've watched him the least because his matches haven't been good, and there hasn't been really any matches, and that's a good thing for him. They haven't been good because Sinner hasn't gotten my attention. First of all, with his draw, right? There hasn't been a matchup that I've circled and made sure to watch, but then there hasn't been a Sinner's in trouble. They're in a 4th set, they're in a 5th set, and I have to watch him. So I haven't seen as much of him as everyone else. Stefanos Tsitsipas, how has my opinion changed of him? It hasn't. Because I mean, what he showed in the Taylor Fritz match, where I got the prediction wrong, right? But what he showed is things that I know he has. He's incredibly clutch for the most part. Sometimes he gets tight with a lead, but I think when he's in a battle, when he's in a war, he's excellent. He is very physical. He is an incredible athlete. Yet, I thought that he'd struggle in this tournament, and he has, with the surgery, with the change in the string beds, the questionable preparation, and he has. It hasn't been his best tennis for most of the event. So I'd say opinion unchanged on Tsitsipas. Daniil Medvedev, nothing's changed for me there. I'll get into the Cressy matchup in a moment, and that was interesting, and I guess I learned some things from that matchup, but not as far as who Daniil Medvedev is. And then Felix, my opinion has changed of him. And part of this is 2022 as a whole. Part of this started as early as ATP Cup when he was, in my opinion, the standout performer of that event. But Felix is showing me a lot here. He is showing me much more tactical guile. He's done some things with his return strategy that have changed things up and given his opponents new look. I love how he is using court position now as an elastic proposition, meaning he can use it to his advantage depending on what he's trying to do in the rally. He is stepping up inside the baseline when he wants to play attacking tennis and he needs to be aggressive, which he's always done. But now I'm seeing that he's also willing to cede court position and move back when he wants to increase his court coverage and maximize his defense. And that's something that he never used to do. He has been so good under pressure. He's won a tremendous amount of tie breaks in this tournament. And now, as I will get to, and this will be a good transition to our first quarterfinal preview, Felix Auger-Aliassime has made 3 straight quarterfinals or better at the majors. And every indication to me suggests that he is ready to handle pressure, ready to deal with the nerves. So that is not why I think Daniil Medvedev will have his way with Felix Auger-Aliassime. I am not predicting a repeat of the U.S. Open semifinal where it was a shaky performance by Felix. However, it's undeniable that there are matchup issues. So let's formally transition to these quarterfinal previews where I will go through all 4 matchups. Again, beginning with Medvedev FAA. Medvedev beat Maxime Cressy in the previous round. It was a match that I was looking forward to. I said on Twitter that it kind of felt like a tennis science experiment with the way Medvedev returns, his susceptibility to serve and volley, and an opponent who is willing, not just willing, who is committed to doing it every single point. And I thought it was a frustrating and difficult match for Daniil, and he had too much for Cressy. He seemed, I never felt like Medvedev was going to lose the match, but it was a challenge for him. He didn't enjoy it. Here's, I guess, what I learned. I'm not going to go too in-depth, obviously, for time reasons, but if you look at the way Djokovic used the serve and volley in Paris versus the way Cressy used it, there's a couple of advantages that Novak had. First of all, I think the contact point is important, and most courts bounce a lot higher than Paris. So I did notice that Medvedev did a really good job at getting those returns low, and part of that was aided by the downward trajectory that Medvedev is able to hit with if the contact point on the return is above, or I guess at chest height. And that's, I think, where Medvedev wants to be hitting these returns, is at chest height, above the net. Obviously, he's 6'6", so chest height is a little bit higher for him than for most, so that he can kind of hit down on the ball and achieve that low, achieve giving the net rusher a low volley. But also, when Medvedev knows that it's coming, he can pick his target correctly pretty much every time. I think that's a big deal. The best way to serve and volley against Medvedev is definitely to mix it up so that you're able. And by the way, Cressy can't mix it up. He doesn't have the game to mix it up. So I'm not saying Maxime Cressy should mix it up. I'm just interpreting why Djokovic had more success serve and volleying against Medvedev than Maxime Cressy, if you look at the percentages. Well, when Medvedev is returning against someone who mixes it up, he doesn't know if he wants to hit that deep return, which is going to be a return with a different trajectory and more air under the ball, or if he wants to hit that short return. So that's a big deal. Against Cressy, he knows his target. He doesn't want to hit with net clearance, and he wants to dip that ball down low. And was Medvedev's court position giving Cressy a lot of court to volley into? Absolutely. And that's what kind of made things difficult on Medvedev. But Daniil was able to make enough returns, chase down enough first volleys, hit the occasional point-winning return because he got it low or sharp enough or hit it hard enough and got enough breaks of serve. I think that Cressy needs to use his skill set a little bit better on return games. That's a topic for another day. As far as FAA versus Marin Cilic, as suspected, Felix's serve was a lot better than Rublev's, and that gave Cilic issues. But the number one factor in this match was, quite frankly, Marin Cilic coming back down to earth, especially on the forehand side. If you compare the numbers from a Marin Cilic perspective from his match against Rublev, which he won, versus his match against Felix, I think it was 40 finishes to 12 unforced errors that Cilic hit against Rublev on the forehand side. And then against Felix, it was 31 finishes to 30 unforced errors. So it is a completely different ball game in terms of Cilic's forehand. I'm so bored, Gill. I'm going to address that later, by the way, and I know that that's a reference to what Medvedev said playing Cressy. I'm gonna address that comment a little bit later on, actually. So, with that being said, Felix versus Medvedev, it's been a matchup nightmare for Felix. Medvedev leads the head-to-head 3-0. They met in 2018, and it was close. It was a third-set tiebreak. Medvedev at that time was 68 in the world, and Felix was 133 in the world as a wild card at the Canada Masters. Medvedev was a completely different player back then, and Felix was a worse player back then. But then, most recently, U.S. Open 2021, it was straight sets, 6-4, 7-5, 6-2. And then just a couple of weeks ago, a couple weeks ago at the ATP Cup, Medvedev beat Felix 6-4, 6-love. The reason for that is FAA's linear power from aggressive court positions are prime for Medvedev's counterattack style. His ability to take pace, to use it against his opponent, and to hit into openings against a Felix who loves to move up inside the baseline so that the down the line kind of opens up, loves to run around his backhand, again, opens up one side of the court to counterattacking, and FAA hasn't had the point construction or the shot tolerance or consistency to stand up to Medvedev in neutral rallies in any sense. So I think that's the best summary that I can provide of why Medvedev has had so much joy in this matchup. My question coming into this match is, can FAA try to change some things up here? Can he slice his backhand more? Can he back up and maybe hit a little bit spinnier and loopier and just see as an experiment how Medvedev reacts to forcing him to create the offense, create off of the ground. Felix, again, he's very fast. He's got great legs. And that's generally not how those two would play when they take the court. Can Felix just throw a curveball? Are we going to see a change-up here? Is he going to try something? That's what I hope. I hope he just tries something. And that is no guarantee that it's going to work. But I hope that we see a wrinkle by Felix in the game plan, which we haven't so far. I guess I'll just note that I do think that FAA's returning is somewhat underrated, and I'm looking forward to seeing it in this match. obviously, again, I know we just saw this matchup in Sydney, but that's just one thing to note. I just wonder, when I delve into the serve return numbers, which Medvedev almost always dominates because he's got one of the great serve return combinations of all time. I wonder if FAA has a good day and Medvedev has a bad day, what those could look like. Because I've talked about Felix's first serve and how unbelievable it is, how great it's been. And I think he's underrated as a returner. So I'm curious to look into those numbers after the match. Of course, Medvedev is a favorite to put more returns in play than Felix is able to. So win that serve return dynamic as far as returnables goes. And then, can Felix make up the difference in his first forehand? He hasn't been able to yet. Medvedev's been able to get the depth on the returns and really blunt Felix's +1 play. So let's see what happens. The last thing I'll say about this matchup is I feel like there's a small chance, very minuscule, and I'm not predicting this, that Medvedev has a fatigue letdown in one of these matches. Again, I don't like that Medvedev had a 3-week offseason. I think that these matches have been more emotionally and physically draining for Medvedev than they usually are. Than they have been in the last couple slams for Medvedev through the early rounds. So if he gets into a war, if Medvedev is dragged into the trenches by Felix, I still have these slight questions, these slight just kind of wonderings. I'm not predicting it, but I think that maybe Medvedev there's a chance he'll lack some of the physical and mental stamina to withstand a war right now. I think it's possible, but I wouldn't predict it. My prediction is Medvedev in 4. I expect Felix takes some baby steps here and makes some strides, but I still think Medvedev gets the better of this matchup. Let us move on now to Tsitsipas and de Minaur. Thank you again for everyone who's joined us live. And if you're just joining me, by the way, I'm going to get to Rafael Nadal versus Denis Shapovalov at the end. I'm doing that for a reason. It's so that people who are rewatching this after the Nadal-Shapo match are more likely to continue watching and not just be like, I already know what happened, and then leave. So that's the strategy here. So I'm going to get into the Nadal-Shapo match. Very much looking forward to that. Just as I check the chat, I see a comment from someone who says, how do you think the courts are being faster and skiddier? I do think they're fast and skiddy. I don't know. I can't compare them to last year because they were fast and skiddy last year too, but they are fast and skiddy, and I am going to be working that into my next couple predictions because there are certainly matchups here that are close, that are exciting and intriguing, and the conditions are definitely the tiebreaker here. Did I say something wrong? Nadal Shapovalov? That's what I was referring to. Anyway. Okay. Let me get to the next one. I don't know what I said if I misspoke, but Tsitsipas versus Sinner. Did I say it wrong? I don't know. But that is the next one that we are going to preview. Sinner took out Alex de Minaur. Again, I was a little bit focused on the Fritz-Tsitsipas match during that one. I don't know if I have anything to say about that match. I didn't really expect the Demon to make too much of a match out of that, and he didn't. I know Sinner looks awesome right now, though. That much is very clear, and I've certainly popped in, I've checked in, I've seen his tennis. It's a barrage. He's hitting his forehand huge. He is really controlling points. He's looking quick, athletic, moving pretty well. Better than he ever has, really, and that physical development continues for Sinner. That's all I can say. Tsitsipas versus Fritz. I made a video on that one, so I don't want to be too redundant here. So let me jump right into it. Who is Tsitsipas right now? It's really tough to tell because I really like how he played in the last 2 sets against Fritz. 4th set and 5th set. Brilliant serving, really awesome play on the forehand, solid enough on the backhand, and pretty unpredictable on the backhand, which you usually can't say about Tsitsipas. But Steph was the guy who was actually willing to change direction down the line more, willing to mix in the slice and make Fritz uncomfortable in that respect more. And all in all, he looked confident and sure of himself for the last 2 sets against Fritz for the first time all tournament. But in a large sample size of Tsitsipas's matches, not just in 2022, but going back to the end of 2021, there has been far more examples, and it's understandable. And again, don't take this as, my overall outlook on Stefanos is very, very positive. But where is he at right now when it comes to the elbow and building up the confidence and building up the timing and the feel for the changes that he's made in the string bend? It's really hard to know who he is right now and how he's going to play. That much is just very, very simple. I am not sure how he is going to play against Jannik Sinner. So I want to throw that out there right now. I think it's really tough to tell. I want to say that Sinner is favored in the betting odds. I think that's interesting because it surprised me. I don't think I actually agree with that. Tsitsipas is still someone who will win a lot more of those short points with his serve and his forehand. And although Sinner has great weaponry off the ground, tons of power, although he's got a really good forehand, I still think that he's not quite as prolific in his +1 play as far as tactics go, and just his comfort in using that shot right away, in using that shot even if the return comes back hard. He's just, I see Tsitsipas as someone who is going to win a lot more of those short, simple points. When it comes to the rallies, I think there's plenty of reason to believe that Sinner is a more confident ball striker right now out of neutral positions compared to Tsitsipas, who's looked a little bit aimless and unsure of himself sometimes in rallies. But if the backhand holds up for Stefanos, it's hard to see Sinner dominating those neutral spots enough to make up for that. And here's the most important thing. These courts are playing so fast, even at night, between Fritz and Tsitsipas. Okay, that was a night match where it's cooler, where it's slowed down. All the points were pretty much short. The points that were long were sometimes important, and every point matters so much. I'm not diminishing the importance of rallies that go past 4 shots. It's extremely important, but if we're going to take a slice of the pie, especially on Tsitsipas's serve, this was bang, bang tennis. And Maxime Cressy was not involved, okay? These are just two guys with great serves and great forehands, and you're just seeing the way these courts are playing. It's really difficult for players to defend and neutralize and return well. That's it. So I still feel like Tsitsipas, if that's going to be the complexion of the match, Tsitsipas is better that way. He's better at playing that game and executing that game consistently. Part of that, by the way, and I don't think I articulated myself very well describing Sinner's +1 game. I do think he hits good +1 forehands, but one of the areas that Tsitsipas is definitely better is following that up to the net and just not relinquishing control of the rally off of that first short ball. Tsitsipas has completely mastered that. I'm not sure Sinner has. There's also a lot of pressure on Sinner. This is very much a first for him. And again, there are mental questions. What is going to keep Jannik Sinner from really... I wouldn't be shocked, is all I'll say, if this match is similar to the Fritz match in the sense that Tsitsipas is more clutch and he wins the big points. Sinner has never been in this spot before. He's been in a major quarterfinal. He was a mega underdog against Nadal, right? Or was that a quarterfinal or a round of 16? I'm going to check my facts here, or you guys can tell me in the comments. But I'm looking at Roland Garros 2020, and I'll be able to get it up real quick here. No, that was a quarterfinal, so my memory was correct. He was a mega underdog in that match, and he lost. This is completely different. This is the biggest match of Jannik Sinner's life after that Miami final where he didn't play well, and I don't know how he's gonna handle that. But again, backhand to backhand, and Sinner's ability to attack the Tsitsipas backhand, that could be an X factor. So it's all about how solid is Steph's backhand, and does that hold up against Sinner? Is Sinner able to create a really big advantage on that cross court, and whenever he gets it onto Tsitsipas's backhand? That's a question. But ultimately, I'm going with Tsitsipas. Also physically, by the way, if this is a marathon physically, I think Tsitsipas will recover from the Fritz match. And although Sinner has spent way less time on court, I've never seen Sinner dragged into the physical trenches, really, in a best of 5. I know he had a 5-setter against Monfils at the U.S. Open, but it's much more tiring to play a player like Tsitsipas, who's going to dictate a lot, a player who is on your level. All of Sinner's 5-setters in the past, they've been against players who he gets to kind of boss around. So this would be completely different if this went long 5 sets. Mental, check for Tsitsipas. Physical, check for Tsitsipas. Serve plus forehand, short points with these conditions, check for Tsitsipas. Would it shock me if Sinner wins? No. I don't know how Tsitsipas is going to play. So I'm going to go with Stefanos in 5. Stefanos in 5 because I'm not sure. And certainly Sinner can win. But I don't really agree with Sinner being favored in the odds here. All right, let us move on to today's quarterfinals. So the night match is going to be Matteo Berrettini against Gael Monfils, a rematch of the 2019 U.S. Open quarterfinals, which was a 5-set epic. I watched the highlights this morning, at least some of them. If I had more time, I would have watched even more of them. The extended highlights. There's a long video up on U.S. Open's YouTube page if you want to watch that. I don't have much to say about their 4th-round matches. Monfils beat Kecmanovic, who's looked awesome, and I'm happy for Miomir Kecmanovic because I think he's going to have a good year based on what we saw here at this tournament. Berrettini crushed Pablo Carreño Busta. Didn't watch that match. I imagine PCB didn't have much left, and I looked at the stats. Matteo was miles better. Can't waste time talking about those matches, to be honest. Both straight sets. I'm going to start with my concerns from the Monfils perspective here. So the first thing is you have to be very tactically focused and present against Matteo Berrettini because you're dealing with massive weapons, right? He's a guy who has that forehand, and you need to be very mindful about how you play that. You can't go to the backhand every time. You got to open up space. So you want to go maybe 1 to the forehand, change to the backhand. Go to the backhand maybe 2 times in a row, and then, again, open to the forehand. You got to be very mindful about how you play him and how you manage the Berrettini forehand. It takes a lot of presence of mind. If you kind of fall asleep, in rallies here and you're not really present tactically, it's a big problem against Matteo because you're going to give him what he likes, and you got to give Berrettini what he doesn't like. You need to be very careful about that. So I think Monfils can sometimes lack that. He can lack that tactical focus, rally to rally, match to match, I think in every respect. So that's a concern, but I do think Monfils has been a little bit better at that recently. This would be a test of new proportions for just how much Monfils can really execute the game plan and focus on giving Berrettini running forehands and backhands. I know I said it in a complicated way. That's the simplest way to say it. When you're in rallies, you got to give him running forehands and backhands. And you need to construct points in ways where that's the only thing that Matteo is getting. Under pressure, there's a very big difference between Berrettini and Monfils. Under pressure, Berrettini has a very simplified approach. His aggression never wavers. He never gets passive. On a side note, by the way, Berrettini served for that match against Monfils at the U.S. Open, and Matteo got passive and didn't go after his forehand. He's grown out of that. That was young Berrettini. He was outside the top 20. He's past that now. He doesn't do that anymore. So I thought that was very interesting. But Berrettini basically always goes after his shots, always has the serve to rely on, is pretty much very clear-headed and extremely clutch. Talked about that with the Alcaraz match. Monfils, under pressure, very unpredictable and struggles to get the balance right between patience and passivity, aggression and recklessness. I think Monfils' shot selection has gotten a lot better, and on a point-in and point-out basis, I think Monfils is starting to hit the nail on the head on a pretty consistent basis. He's really playing with excellent poise, and again, I love the shot selection. But then when things get really, really tense, I think it breaks down a little bit, and he goes back to his old ways. He can, again, do too much waiting. And if you get passive against Berrettini, he's going to get forehands and he's going to destroy you. I mean, it is a really bad way to play against Matteo. You can't back up behind the baseline and slow down your shots and try to run because it's, can Monfils come up with some spectacular passing shots, some spectacular defense to offense kind of counterattack moments? Yes, but it's not sustainable. And then I think when Monfils has been aggressive under pressure, sometimes it has been sometimes reckless, just kind of not waiting for his spot and going for low percentage shots. So ultimately, I trust Berrettini way more under pressure. Those are the reasons why Berrettini would win. Let me give some love to Monfils. If Monfils wins, I think here's what it looks like. First of all, you know what? I have one thing I didn't talk about. Okay, scratch that. One more thing in favor of Berrettini. I wonder if Matteo can take the air out of this match. Take the energy out of this match. Pull a Maxime Cressy. Make it boring. I say that in jest. I don't believe in that. But if he can take the rhythm and the energy and the crowd, who's going to be pulling for Monfils, can take the crowd out of this match, he's going to take away some of Monfils' effectiveness. Monfils is an energy player. He's a feel player. And I think Berrettini should actually be even more aggressive than he usually is. I think that he should pick his spots in return games to be more aggressive on return, make more unforced errors as a result. But I think if he's down, if I'm Matteo Berrettini and I'm down 30-love on a return game, I'm not going to let Monfils get rhythm and go showtime. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to try to keep the points short and take the air and the energy out of the match. And Berrettini's pretty good at that, so I think he could do that. In favor of Monfils, Monfils has a extremely underrated return. Unbelievably underrated. He covers the box well. I anticipate that he will, at times in this match, return Berrettini's serve really well. Athleticism is a huge asset in the return, and Monfils doesn't lack in that. And he's so good at, again, being explosive out of his split step and making those stretch returns and keeps things pretty short and has amazing dexterity and hand-eye. His return is awesome. It's probably not talked about enough that's one of his best attributes. He also has great defensive instincts. So a great return and great defensive instincts can theoretically take away Matteo's short point dominance if it's ultimately successful. Those 0 through 4, and that's how Berrettini wins his matches, is you don't win any points on his serve in this large slice of points that are four shots or less on Berrettini's serve. Monfils is a candidate to try to disrupt that dominance because of what he does on return and defense. And if he's able to successfully do that, Monfils has enough on his own serve. Monfils has enough in the rallies. And Monfils has been really great, by the way, on his own serve, winning those easy points. I think that he has been the best +1 play I've ever seen out of Gael Monfils in my life has been in this tournament. Ultimately, I think the factors, I would say, is stronger in favor of Matteo Berrettini, and I'm going to pick Berrettini in 4 sets. All right, it is finally time to pick a match that I will cover today. Rafael Nadal versus Denis Shapovalov. Can't wait for this one. Can't wait to see how this one goes down. I'm really excited. As far as the 4th round matches go, Nadal versus Mannarino, there's a video out on that. So if you want my extended thoughts on Nadal Mannarino, check that out after I'm done with this live stream. Shapovalov versus Zverev, I also touched on that. I thought the most interesting thing about that match was Shapovalov's return and how good it was against Zverev, essentially. Nadal's return was also the story of the Mannarino match. His adjustments and how he aggressively returned the second serve, which I think really could be a factor against Shapo. I'll get into that tactic as well. Here are my questions in this match. How much will Shapovalov respect the Nadal serve? This isn't an argument for either player. This isn't something in Shapo's favor or Nadal's favor. It's just a question. Is Shapo going to take that approach of blocking returns and making sure to get a high percentage in play? Is he going to have that approach like he did against Zverev and Opelka, who obviously serve a lot faster than Nadal? Or is he going to take big cuts on the return and probably miss too many returns? But also, maybe he won't miss that many. So, very difficult to answer. I don't know how he's going to play it. I think the best way to play it would be to respect Nadal's serve. Nadal's serving well. I think Shapovalov's a better player when he blocks his returns. Let's see what he does. My second question, how much is Nadal willing to run right now? Can his body take abuse? Because a lot of people have obviously asked me throughout the tournament, where's Nadal at? Where's his form at? Where is he at? Where is he at? When you play a player who is at a top 10 level like Shapovalov, it's a different ballgame. What's the answer? You don't know. You just don't know based on Nadal's matches until this point. Because Shapo's going to push him around at certain points. Nadal is going to have to do way more running in this match than he has. It's going to be a lot harder on his body. And is his body ready to take the abuse right now, despite coming into this season in a place physically where it was a long and hard, arduous rehabilitation process? This is a different ballgame. I think Nadal has moved well, by the way. He's covering the court well. But as far as endurance and body wear, is he going to go hard into the corners for 3-4 hours here, maybe 5 hours? Can Nadal do that? How much running is he willing to do? That's a question. Here's the tactical key in this match. Who is going to hit more forehands? Assuming both forehands are equally effective. I think that is going to be the tactical key. That comes down to many things. It comes down to the first thing you look at is return. When it comes to first serve returns, I don't think either player is going to be able to make a lot of returns to the opponent's backhand. Maybe they can. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, but I don't think so. I am going to be looking for second serve return strategy and how much either of them are going to be able to hit second serve returns consistently to the backhand of their opponents. That goes both ways because you have two massive, incredible weapons in lefty, big left hooks that these guys have, Nadal and Shapo, and ultimately they need to avoid each other's forehands and get it to the backhand. Here's my net on this match, by the way. I'm kind of cutting to the chase here, and then I'll explain myself. My head says Shapo. My gut says Nadal. So I'll start with my head, and then I'll go to my gut. This court, as I said, is rewarding aggression in a big way. It's fast, it's slick, and I have seen countless matches throughout these couple weeks where the player who's hitting bigger, serving better, going for their shots is simply winning more. High number of forced errors and winners. And, the unforced errors have been high with some of these players, and they've still been able to win because they're getting so much purchase out of their aggressive play. And Shapovalov is serving bigger. He's hitting his forehand bigger and more consistently with confidence. And he's actually making returns. I think that this is once again going to be a very short point-oriented match. Boom, boom, bang, bang. It's for the same reason I think it's going to be that way with Tsitsipas and Sinner. I just think that's how these matches have been played at this year's Australian Open because of this surface, because of these conditions. And I think that this match will be no exception. And I ask myself, who is more comfortable in that kind of match? Who delivers more firepower in those situations off of the serve especially? And the answer is Shapovalov for me. And then I want to talk about Rome. In Rome, Shapo had match points, and Nadal came back and won that match. I think the reason Nadal was able to get a hold on that match, because he was down a set in 4-1, is because the points were being allowed to develop. And when the points were allowed to develop, Nadal could get the rallies onto Shapovalov's backhand, which is the big key here. I think it's much harder. It's going to be much harder for Nadal to get the ball onto Shapovalov's backhand on this surface. First of all, the points being shorter, less time for the point to develop beyond the serve +1. But second, Nadal changing direction on his forehand is always much harder on hard court. It's always much harder for him to make that change of direction when the ball is skidding through the court versus clay when it stops up and sits up. So for Nadal to pattern change onto Shapovalov's backhand, it's going to be a little bit harder. I think in terms of the baseline directionals, Shapovalov being a lefty with a bazooka forehand, like Fernando Verdasco was, I think that's a good chemistry directionally for Shapovalov versus Nadal. I think in general, if you look at the cross-court matchups, if you look at and I don't want to delve too deep into every single scenario, because let's do that after the match. You might as well do that after the match. I do think that Shapovalov does play a really good style against Nadal, being a lefty with a very, very dangerous forehand. Just like I think the best backhands in the world are the ones that trouble Nadal the most. It's the same thing. It's a side of the court. It's the ad side of the court. And Nadal is very good at attacking the ad side of the court. So I said it a lot with thinking that Nadal would have to face someone like an Aslan Karatsev, someone like a Hubert Hurkacz, and then Khachanov doing that to some extent. I talked about it with that. This is a totally another level, but it's the same thing. So let's see how these points develop. But I think in general, it's going to be harder for Nadal to get to the Shapovalov backhand. And by the way, I want to say one more thing about Nadal's serve direction. Nadal's serve direction is generally about 70% to the righty backhand, and then he goes against the grain to the righty forehand on both sides. And when he goes against the grain, that's his flat serve, and it's usually a lower percentage serve. Well, against Shapovalov, is he going to flip that? Is he going to change that around? Is he going to serve more to the Shapo backhand, which is usually the smart thing to do? And is that going to be a lower percentage serve for Nadal, given the fact that that's usually his low percentage serve? So I'll be watching Nadal's first serve percentage because directionally he needs to do something completely different. And how's that going to affect him? Shapovalov, I think, can do all the same things that he always does. Now let me get to my gut. It still says Nadal. He's got amazing heart in these situations to fight through any kind of these matches, and in that case, it's always advantage Nadal when it comes to intangibles. But I've been wrong twice here in this tournament with upset picks where they had the tennis and just lost in the mental department. Alcaraz against Berrettini, Alcaraz in the beginning of the match, and then Fritz against Tsitsipas, Fritz at the end of the match more, but also just at the end of every set, just the nerves getting to him. And I'm just questioning if the chips are down and there's a ton of pressure on both players. I wonder if Shapovalov is going to be able to maintain consistency. Nadal, I'm pretty sure he's going to be able to maintain that. So I kind of feel like going Nadal in 5 here, even though my brain disagrees. It's just kind of a gut, and I think I'm going to go with my gut. It's kind of Nadal is Nadal, and I think he'll figure it out. I don't think going 5 would really be, an awesome idea for him. But remember, when I say 5, I'm not necessarily predicting a 5-setter. I'm saying that I'm not really sure, and I'm not very confident in my prediction. Ultimately, I give Shapovalov a lot of respect. I do want to look at the comments here. So, because I see a lot of people commenting on this prediction as I'm giving it. So I want to definitely read that. I don't care about Abu Dhabi. For the person commenting about Abu Dhabi, I mean, it's literally very irrelevant. It's an exhibition. Nadal was really bad at that point. I literally just don't care about it. I know Shapo beat Nadal in Abu Dhabi. I mean, so yeah, I'm discounting that. That's not a reason why I think Shapovalov has a really good chance in this match. The fact that what's your guts record versus your heads record? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. Yeah, and then Jack says, what is going to matter is the mental game, and that is 100% advantage Nadal. It's kind of where I'm at. If it's a short period, this is a really good comment. If it's a short match, if it's a short point-oriented match, that means Nadal could go a long time. And in that case, I think there isn't a lot of running. I don't think that's true. I think it's about intensity. And with Shapovalov's aggression and how big he hits off the ground, he forces Nadal to make really violent and aggressive cuts into the corners all the time. So you shouldn't look at match duration, because Nadal could stand in the middle of the court and hit dictating forehands for 5 hours, no problem. Most players could. Can you run to the corners and defend against 90-mile-per-hour ground strokes for 3 hours? What's harder? It's definitely harder to run. So I think regardless, we are going to see Nadal take some body blows here. Regardless of how long the match is, it's going to be physically stressful for him. Whereas no one else who he's played, I think, has really been able to bring that to the table consistently. I mean, Khachanov brought some aggression, but he brought misses at a pretty high rate too. So I don't know. Okay. this being daytime isn't good for Rafa. Rafa likes, I think it's, I don't know. Good question. You know, Nadal generally likes the heat. He's great in the heat. He likes it lively. He likes it fast so that his forehand can get through the court. And ultimately, I think that's better for Rafa, because you want, you know, Nadal wants his ball to rush Shapovalov. And I didn't get into this in my preview, but I'll likely get into it in the post-match, regardless of what happens. How much time Shapovalov has on the other side of the court is the number one key for if he's going to be consistent or not. And if I'm Nadal, I'm going to try to stay kind of on top of the baseline, and I'm going to try to hit with good penetrating pace, flattening out if I can, even towards the middle of the court and to Shapovalov's backhand. I'm interested in the backhand to backhand exchanges, by the way. I'm interested in how those are going to go. Let's see. Obviously, Shapo is an unpredictable player in terms of his level of consistency in general. So, but, you know, he's confident right now and he's doing all the things. I do think that this court is... this court's playing kind of similar to Wimbledon in the sense that the ball just really, it's kind of glossy and it skids right through. Would you be surprised if Nadal wins it in 3? Yeah, I think I would be. I'd be surprised if either player wins it in 3. I want to... okay, last one, and then I want to get to some comments. Do you think Nadal will return aggressively from the baseline or stand far behind? Good question. And it's going to be a key, because the further back Rafa stands, the more time Shapovalov has to find his forehand, the longer time the ball is traveling in the air. So I think if Nadal can stand far up and can hit that return effectively, completely changes Shapo's or Nadal's chances to win the match in his favor. If he's able to take the return early and not give Shapovalov that time on the first ball, and if he can get it to his backhand, completely changes the match. Now you're getting those lengthy rallies that we saw in Rome that Nadal was able to kind of work through Shapo's backhand and find those errors. Do I think Shapo gets tight closing sets and matches? I think some parts of his game gets tight, but generally he doesn't get passive, which is a good thing. But I think the second serve gets a little bit tight. Let me get to a comment that someone put in the community tab pre-match, and then I want to talk about one other thing, and then I'll sign off here. Hi, Gill. Many people have discounted Rafa's chances at this tournament. Some have had him as the 4th or 5th favorite behind Med, Zverev, and Tsitsipas. I just want to interject here. Gill speaking, not the comment. Having him behind Tsitsipas would have been pretty silly in my opinion. But he's made the quarterfinals, only dropping one set. If he beats Shap today, what would you weigh his chances of of winning his second Australian Open? That depends on a couple things. But first of all, we are about to learn so much about Rafael Nadal. I want to make that very clear. I'm fair in this case. And this is true for all players. When a player isn't pushed, you don't learn about them. You just don't. You learn about a player when they meet someone else on the other side of the net who can push them. Then you learn about where they're at. We don't know a lot about where Nadal is at right now because he has not been pushed. And I don't mean he hasn't been pushed on the scoreline. I mean, he hasn't been pushed by facing an opponent that is playing at a top 10 level of tennis. And that's where Shapovalov is. So there was never any question, in my mind at least, that Nadal was going to get picked off early. I had question about if Hurkacz brings a top 10 level against Nadal. I had questions before the tournament about if Karatsev brings a top 10 level to Nadal. And now I have questions about if Shapovalov brings a top 10 level to Nadal, also being, I think, a good matchup for Dennis, or a workable matchup for Dennis tactically. That's where the questions are. If Nadal passes this test, we will learn a ton about him, and then we will be able to make a determination that will probably be that Nadal can win the Australian Open if he can get through this match. Because if he can get through this match, assuming Shapovalov shows up and plays well, that's going to say a lot. You know, this would be a very impressive win. So we are about to learn what Nadal's true contender status is, I think unequivocally. All right. I want to address also this one from Justin Lieb. He says, I've never seen the type of energy on the tennis court by players and off the court by the fans as I did when watching Kyrgios Kokkinakis doubles. It felt like an NBA game style of energy, and Kyrgios made a comment after round 3 saying tennis has suffered from pushing the big 3 for so long and not rewarding player personality. Long term, do you think this might shift doubles into the spotlight, and do you think tennis would benefit from a more showman-like energy? The part about doubles being in the spotlight, I think definitely not, and I don't want to really get into that because so much needs to happen for doubles to be in the spotlight. It's not even close. But in terms of tennis having a more showman-like energy, it reminded me of Medvedev's comment against Cressy when Medvedev said, "This is so boring," or and then he also said at another point, "This is the unluckiest day of my life." And he said that loud enough for Cressy to hear him. And then he admitted after the match that he was doing it to get into Cressy's head. He wanted Cressy to hear him. So, first of all, I don't really approve. I think what Medvedev said, if I'm being honest, is kind of lame. Like, I just think it's a dumb chirp. It's, what do you mean? It's boring. I think I don't love that. I think it's immature and weird. And then Medvedev said, "I'm not proud of it," and he apologized. So whatever, right? I mean, that's Daniil. That's very, very respectable on Daniil's part for just taking responsibility and moving on. But all in all, this whole thing about showmanship in tennis and embracing different personalities, I do think that tennis needs to be much better at embracing different personalities and welcoming a little bit of friction and a little bit of showmanship at times. And what you want is the contrast. And that is, I think, what people misunderstand when I make this argument. There are going to be, like, if you think of MMA and boxing and you have this vision of these brash personalities who are lewd and vulgar at times and can be irreverent, and for a lot of people, that's a total turnoff. The thing is, boxing and MMA also has athletes that are all about class and respect, and they are personalities that are kind of the antithesis of these louder, more disrespectful, kind of trash-talking characters. And I think if tennis had a little bit of a contrast there and didn't look at it as a bad thing, that's fine. So I think that the way Djokovic's personality is different from Nadal and Federer's, that's good. I think that's good for the sport. I think the way Medvedev's personality is, I think it's good for the sport. And I do think that these things should be embraced a little bit more. All right, so with that, I'm going to read a couple of comments in the live chat, and then I will put a kibosh on the live stream. Do you think Nadal is going to use his slice against Shapo? No, I think he shouldn't. So Manarino is a great player to slice. Amazing. You take pace, you make it low. I talked about it in the post-match. Slice against Shapovalov is a pretty awful idea. Shapo's amazing at generating his own pace, unlike Mannarino. Incredible racket speed, tremendous RPM. It's very similar to slicing against Nadal. Slicing against Nadal is the worst idea in the world. You basically have a death wish if you do it. And Shapovalov similar in that sense. The only way Nadal might want to use a slice is short angle cross court to make Shapovalov hit an awkward short backhand. And Shapovalov cannot, sometimes he doesn't handle that shot very well when he needs to slice the backhand himself. If you put him in an awkward position in the midcourt on the backhand, but I mean, it's pretty tough to slice against Shapovalov. Wouldn't the Mannarino first set count as being pushed to the limit? I get it wasn't for the whole match, but man, that was intense. So here's what I'd say about that. And let me respond to the push to the limit. If that's Nadal being pushed to the limit, that's bad. He needs to play better than that, right? Because, I mean, Mannarino was playing some good ball, but as far as Nadal being at his limits of how he can play, if that's him being pushed to the limit, if that's Nadal at his limits, then he's unlikely to win this match against Shapovalov. He needs to play much better than that. So, again, don't go on the score line, I think. It's not that Nadal hasn't been pushed on the scoreline. He lost a set to Khachanov. He lost a set to Mannarino. But, again, I guess I should rephrase. Maybe I should rephrase, but maybe not. But what I'm saying is, it takes an opponent who's on Nadal's level to bring him top 10 level tennis. And if he played someone who was underranked, playing like a top 10 guy, but just not in the top 10, that would be different. Mannarino, playing great. He's a niche matchup, awkward, tricky, but and doing really good things. But Nadal was not great in that first set in a lot of ways. He probably shouldn't have won it. So when I say push to the limit, I don't mean that someone was able to play Nadal close and intense. I mean that someone was able to play Nadal. I mean that Nadal was playing his best tennis and it was still a war. That's being pushed. It's still difficult. I'm sorry, but that's just first set Mannarino. That's not how we learn a lot against Nadal. The only way you would learn about that against Nadal is if you panicked and said, well, if Nadal's not ready for that kind of Adrian Mannarino, Nadal's definitely not ready for Shapovalov. But I don't look at it that way. I look at it as, Nadal made some really key adjustments and came out through a tight first set, but he's going to need to play a lot better against Dennis, and he likely will play a lot better against Dennis. Oops. Just reading some comments here. Did Zverev seem unaffected by the loss in post-presser? I don't think so. I watched that press conference, and I thought Zverev took responsibility for it. And I think when you lose that badly, sometimes it's a little bit less painful than losing a tight match. So I thought he was just desolate emotionally and, fairly disappointed. But no, I thought the presser was fine. Okay. I think that's it. I think I'm going to wrap it up there, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me. A couple of reminders. I will be posting after the Nadal Shapovalov match a post-match video. I think I'm trying to think if there's any other housekeeping items. I don't think so. Remember that if you hit the join button, you can support the long-term health of the channel by subscribing and joining and becoming a member for $2 a month. Other than that, I'm available on all podcast platforms. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time.